Hi everyone. So yesterday we talked about the different types of brief that exist, and we talked about what should be in a brief, as you can see on this particular part here. I know that I asked for a definition and an example of each, and I don't want people to get too worried about finding an example online, because often briefs for things do not actually get released. It tends to stay hidden for quite a while, because of course these are very confidential and copyrighted documents. So I thought I'd just go through how you might want to think about finding examples for your briefs. So we know, remember, contractual, negotiated, formal, informal. So let's start with those. So contractual is the larger non-negotiable projects that are for large-scale parts. So an example of this might be Dragon Quest XI, just to pick it up randomly from Wikipedia here. So we know that Square Enix has a huge amount of sort of small studios. It's a very large company that, of course, is going to be contracting out different parts to its different studios, and we can see just in the sheer amount of different people involved in it that we know that these are all different studios offering different parts. So the writers and the artists would be putting in sort of concept art and the narrative, which then would be sent to the producers and the designers to make sure that's all coming into the game properly. You'd also have composers who'd have to match up with everything else as well. So though this is not outright saying what type of brief it is, we can assume certain things about Dragon Quest XI. So the things you might assume are that it must have been a contractual brief, because it's a huge scale project where they don't want lots of different people changing things as we go. It's going to be formal, because they want meeting minutes, they want formalised meetings, want to make sure they're signing off on everything to make sure it works, it lines up with everything else. It's not going to be something like a commission brief or a tender brief or anything like that, but there's a large chance, because of the amount of studios within the creation of the product, that the brief would be shared cooperatively, because it's a very complex piece of work. So there we go. One game already very easily matching up to at least 3 of these different briefs. So don't worry about finding actual briefs, because you won't. Just make sure and try and make an educated estimation of what a game would have used. Okay? Alrighty. Okay, though I said you probably won't find any briefs out there, there are a few. Generally for older games, this is actually a translated version of Metal Gear Solid 2's sort of grand game plan, they're calling it. It's an interesting read, and they do have some of the bits you'd expect from it. So they've got the genre they're going for, they've got their target audience, they've got how they're approaching it, differing from game companies' similar titles, and making sure it's unique and different from everything else on the market. So it's really interesting that they've released this online, so it can be found, but do remember this is from 1999. That's literally 21 years ago, so we're lucky to have this. So again, you can find them if you search hard enough, but don't worry about finding sort of legitimate plans. You can make those assumptions, as I discussed earlier. It's actually a really interesting read altogether. You might notice that the original title was Metal Gear Solid 3, because it would make them think, why is it 3 and not 2? And it'll have a big impact. I mean, that's a crazy idea. It's worse than not Rocky. What's the other one? The First Blood, Rambo. Anyway, there you go. One thing that you might all like, GDC did get cancelled this year because of the coronavirus, which is why we're all inside at the moment. But the one upside to that, I guess, is the fact that they actually are releasing all of their their lectures and everything online for free, which is fantastic, especially if any of you are, well, hopefully you are all budding game developers. That you can find them on GDC Vault or on their YouTube channel. It's definitely worth looking through. Some of the best lectures I've heard on games development have been from these guys, or at least the people at the conference. Anyway, I definitely think it's worth you having a look if you've got some spare time, and all their historical ones, the ones from the past, are there as well. If nothing else, I recommend the Magic the Gathering 20 Things They Learnt version. That was a few years ago. Have a little look.